Royal Guard GRABS Charlotte from school bus, after driver admits taking different route. Charlotte's morning began just like any other weekday. The sun was rising gently over the town, painting the sky with soft orange and pink colors. Birds were sitting on the wires above the street, singing in short, cheerful notes. The air felt cool, and a calm breeze moved through the neighborhood, making everything seem peaceful. Charlotte stood outside her house with her backpack, waiting for the school bus. She liked mornings like this, quiet, slow, and full of promise. She was an 8-year-old girl with bright eyes and a warm smile, known for being curious and polite. People around the neighborhood often said she had a thoughtful way of observing things, even small details others ignored. Today, she was excited about a science project she would present in class. She had worked on it for days, and she hoped her teacher would like it. The bus arrived with its usual soft rumble. The doors opened with a familiar hiss, and Charlotte stepped inside. She greeted the driver, Mr. Denny, who had been driving the route for years. He usually responded with a friendly nod or a tired smile. But today, something felt slightly different. He did smile, but it seemed smaller than usual, almost uncertain. Charlotte noticed it but didn't think too much about it. Adults had busy lives, she assumed, and maybe he was just having a long morning. She walked down the aisle and sat in her usual seat, third row from the front next to the window. She loved the window seat because she liked watching the world move by, the trees, the shops, and the people starting their day. A few friends waved at her as she sat down. Some were busy chatting, and others were still half asleep. The bus continued along its regular path, stopping to pick up more children. The morning seemed normal at first. Laughter floated through the bus, and conversations turned toward homework, games, and weekend plans. A teacher's aide named Miss Hannah sat near the front, as she usually did, helping keep the children calm and organized. Charlotte pressed her forehead gently against the glass, enjoying the cool touch. As the bus passed a cluster of tall trees, she pulled out her notebook and flipped through her science project notes. She practiced quietly, whispering her lines to herself. But a few minutes later, something subtle changed. The bus turned onto a road that Charlotte didn't recognize. She blinked and sat up a little straighter. It wasn't a sharp or sudden turn, nothing dramatic, but it was noticeable because they never went that way. At first, she doubted her memory. Maybe she had forgotten this road existed. Roads could look different in morning light. Maybe there was construction on the usual route. She tried reassuring herself, but a small part of her brain stayed alert. She kept her eyes fixed outside, watching carefully. Soon, 2 other children began whispering. One asked, "Why are we going this way?" Another said, "This isn't the normal street." Charlotte swallowed gently. She didn't want to worry, but she also didn't want to ignore the unusual feeling building in her stomach. She glanced toward the front. The driver kept his eyes on the road, his expression unreadable. Miss Hannah noticed the change in atmosphere. The children weren't loud anymore. They were quieter, curious, and uncertain. That alone was unusual. They were normally full of noise and energy. Charlotte leaned slightly into the aisle to see better. The trees they passed were tall and unfamiliar. The buildings looked different too, fewer shops, more storage units, and wide, empty lots. Finally, Miss Hannah stood up from her seat and walked toward the front. Her voice was calm, friendly, and steady. "Mr. Denny," she said softly, "this isn't the usual route, is it?" The driver glanced at her in the mirror. "Just avoiding a little traffic," he replied quickly without turning his head. Miss Hannah paused. The explanation wasn't unusual, but something about the way he said it made her look slightly uneasy. Still, she didn't want to alarm the children. She returned to her seat but kept her eyes on him. Charlotte's heartbeat felt a little quicker. Traffic, she wondered silently. They had taken the same route every day for months. She didn't remember any traffic problems on school mornings, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she looked at Miss Hannah, hoping the teacher's aide might give a reassuring smile. Miss Hannah did smile, but it looked more like she was trying to appear calm rather than actually feeling calm. A few minutes passed, and the road stretched out in a direction that was completely unfamiliar. The children grew even quieter. Charlotte's hands tightened around her notebook. She felt a strange mixture of curiosity and worry, nothing frightening, just something that didn't feel right. Miss Hannah reached for the small device attached to her badge, a radio used to communicate with the school. It was meant for emergencies or unexpected issues like delays or misplaced items. She held it discreetly, shielding it from the children's view, and spoke softly into it. "This is Miss Hannah on bus 7, she whispered. "We appear to be taking an unfamiliar route. Can someone check if there's been a change in the schedule?" The response came quickly. The school office replied that no changes had been made. The route was supposed to be the same as always. Miss Hannah's expression tightened slightly. She thanked the office and ended the call, then looked out the window. The scenery was shifting to long stretches of road with fewer houses. Charlotte noticed her expression and felt her own nerves grow. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she could tell that the adults were starting to pay attention to something unusual. Children were sensitive to the moods around them. Even without knowing details, Charlotte felt the quiet tension forming in the air. A soft murmur spread across the bus as more children realized the scenery didn't look familiar. Some asked whispered questions. "Where are we going?" Charlotte wished she could answer them, but she didn't know any more than they did. One boy tried to lighten the mood by saying, "Maybe we'll get to school early." But even his cheerful voice faded when he noticed that no one seemed convinced. The bus made another turn, then another. Each one made the road look less and less like the usual path. Charlotte pressed her hands together and took a slow breath, just like her mother always taught her when she felt uncertain. Meanwhile, Miss Hannah quietly contacted the school again, giving more details this time. The office assured her they were checking nearby cameras to trace the bus's path. Charlotte didn't know all of this, but she could tell something was happening. Adults had voices that changed when something important was going on, quieter, more careful. Miss Hannah's voice had that tone now. Charlotte turned back to the window. The trees were thicker here, and the road seemed narrower. The bus passed a row of warehouses, large, gray buildings she had never noticed before. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, its echo stretching across the open space. She thought about her father, who worked at the embassy. He always reminded her to pay attention to her surroundings. He said awareness was a useful skill in life, not because the world was scary, but because understanding things made people feel confident and safe. Charlotte remembered his words now. She tried to stay calm and observant. She watched every sign they passed, every building, every turn. She didn't want to imagine anything bad. She just wanted to understand what was happening. The bus slowed slightly. Charlotte's heart lifted for a moment. Maybe they were turning back toward the familiar road. But then the bus continued forward. Miss Hannah walked halfway up the aisle again, pretending to check on some children, but her eyes kept drifting toward the front windows. She was still calm, still gentle, but Charlotte knew she was worried. Charlotte leaned back in her seat and took a slow breath. She looked at her classmates. Some were confused, some were curious, and some simply stared out the window with wide eyes. The sunlight had shifted by now, creating longer shadows across the road. Charlotte felt the bus's gentle vibration under her feet, the steady hum of the engine, and the soft chatter of children unsure how to feel. She didn't know what was going to happen next, but she sensed that something important was going on, something the adults would solve, something the children would remember. And somewhere far away, though she didn't know it yet, her school and her family were already working to understand exactly where the bus was going and why. But for Charlotte, in that moment, all she could do was sit quietly, watch closely, and wait for the next clue in the changing landscape outside her window. At the embassy, the morning had started just as peacefully as Charlotte's day had begun at home. The tall building stood quietly under the soft sunlight, its flag waving gently in the early breeze. Staff members walked through the halls carrying files, greeting one another and preparing for their meetings. Everything felt calm and orderly, the way it usually did. Charlotte's father, Daniel, was in his office reviewing a few documents. He liked to begin his mornings with quiet reading before the day became busy. His desk was neat, with carefully arranged folders, a framed picture of Charlotte, and a small plant she had given him as a birthday gift. Anyone who walked into his office could see immediately how much he loved and valued his daughter. As he read through a report, his assistant, Myra, knocked gently on the door and stepped in. "Sir, the school called," she said politely, holding a small notepad. Daniel looked up with mild curiosity. "Is Charlotte all right?" he asked casually. It was a common thing for schools to call about events or reminders. Myra nodded but looked slightly puzzled. "They said the bus she's on has taken a different route this morning." Daniel straightened in his chair. "A different route? Was there a road closure?" They didn't mention any, Myra replied. They said one of the staff on the bus contacted them because it seemed unusual. Daniel paused. He wasn't alarmed yet, but he paid attention. Details mattered to him, especially when it came to Charlotte. Did they explain why the route changed? No, sir, they're checking, she answered gently. Daniel thanked her and stood up from his chair. He walked over to the window, looking out at the busy embassy courtyard below. Cars were moving in and out, security guards spoke calmly through their radios, and everything appeared normal. Yet the information Myra had shared lingered in his mind. The school bus route was very consistent. It rarely changed. He took a slow breath and turned back to Myra. Let's get more information. Ask the school to update us as soon as they know anything. While Myra stepped out to make the call, Daniel remained by the window, watching the movement outside. He reminded himself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it truly was a small change, perhaps because of traffic or construction. But he also knew that his family had a small team of security staff assigned to them, not because anyone expected trouble, but because it was protocol for families connected to diplomatic work. Safety procedures were always taken seriously. A few minutes later, Myra returned, her expression calm but more focused. Sir, the school says they still have no explanation for the change. They are tracking the bus through nearby traffic cameras. Daniel nodded slowly. Thank you. He didn't want to worry, but the careful part of his mind, the part trained to analyze details, began to pay closer attention. He walked to his desk and picked up his phone. He dialed the head of his security detail, a dependable man named Rowan. Good morning, sir, Rowan answered promptly. Daniel explained the situation clearly and calmly. Charlotte's bus has taken an unexpected route this morning. The school is checking cameras. I want a location update. Rowan didn't hesitate. Understood, sir. I'll track it now. I'll update you in minutes. As Daniel hung up the phone, he noticed something small inside him shift, not panic, but a quiet alertness, a gentle tightening of focus. He trusted Rowan and his team completely. Their training had taught them to respond quickly and responsibly. While waiting, Daniel tried to keep himself calm. He walked around his office, straightened a few papers, and glanced again at the picture of Charlotte smiling beside her science project. He knew she was brave and observant. If she sensed anything unusual, she would stay calm. He trusted her awareness almost as much as he trusted the security staff. Within minutes, Rowan called back. Sir, we reviewed the nearest traffic cameras. The bus has indeed taken a different route, one that doesn't match the regular school path. Daniel asked carefully, is the route unsafe? It's not normally used for school transport. It passes through areas with less regular traffic, Rowan replied in a steady voice. We don't have enough information yet to make conclusions, but we are monitoring it. Daniel closed his eyes briefly and nodded to himself before responding. Send a team to follow the bus path discreetly. Keep me updated. Yes, sir, we're on it. Daniel thanked him and ended the call, then walked out of his office. He didn't rush. He moved with measured steps, keeping his expression composed. Several embassy staff members greeted him politely as he passed, unaware of the matter taking shape. He entered a small conference room adjacent to his office. Myra followed with her notepad, prepared for whatever instructions he might give. Myra, Daniel said softly, please inform the ambassador that I'll need a few minutes of privacy. Something important is unfolding. Of course, sir, she replied with gentle understanding. A moment later, Daniel received another call, this time from the school administrator. The administrator sounded calm but slightly concerned. Mr. Hale, we just wanted to update you. We confirmed there were no planned route changes today. One of our staff members on the bus contacted us because she found the new path unusual. We're working with transportation services to understand the situation. Daniel appreciated the communication. Thank you. Please keep us updated. My security detail is monitoring as well. He ended the call, then remained quiet for a few seconds, letting the information settle. He wasn't alarmed in a frightening way. Rather, he was focused, thoughtful, and alert. He knew from experience that unexpected events often had simple explanations, but they needed careful attention until those explanations were clear. Meanwhile, Rowan's team worked quickly. They checked intersections, reviewed traffic feeds, and compared the planned route with the one being taken. What they saw confirmed the earlier reports. The bus was moving steadily away from familiar areas. Rowan called again. Sir, we're dispatching a small escort team to monitor from a safe distance. They won't interfere unless needed. Daniel responded. Thank you, Rowan. Keep the children's safety as the highest priority. Always, sir, Rowan replied. Inside the embassy, word began to spread gently, with staff members whispering among themselves. They didn't know many details, only that Charlotte's bus route had changed unexpectedly. People cared about her. She often visited the embassy after school, carrying drawings and cheerful stories, brightening afternoons. Some staff members paused their work briefly, silently hoping everything would turn out fine. Not out of worry, but out of affection and respect. Daniel remained in the conference room, pacing softly across the carpet as he thought. He stopped occasionally to check his phone, waiting for updates. He practiced steady breathing, the kind he had taught Charlotte during stressful moments. After some minutes, Rowan reached out again. Sir, our team has eyes on the general direction of the bus. It appears to be heading toward a quieter area of town. Nothing unsafe at the moment, just unusual. Daniel nodded, even though Rowan couldn't see him. Good. Continue observation. Please update me every few minutes. Yes, sir. Daniel ended the call and sat down slowly, clasping his hands together. He reminded himself that Charlotte was not alone. She was surrounded by classmates, by a responsible teacher's aide, and by adults who were paying close attention. He told himself that until they had clear information, there was no need to imagine anything unkind. Still, he wanted answers. Back on the bus, though he didn't know it, Charlotte was sitting quietly, watching the scenery change. She tried to stay calm and thoughtful, just as her father always encouraged her to do. At the embassy, Daniel tried to do the same. A few minutes later, Rowan called again with new information. Sir, we traced the bus movement. It passed an area with fewer shops and more open space. It's still moving steadily. No sudden stops, no irregular driving, just a different path. Daniel appreciated the detailed update. Thank you. Continue to monitor. He ended the call and leaned back slightly. He reminded himself that staff members occasionally made decisions that weren't perfectly aligned with standard plans. Maybe the driver took an alternate path he believed would be quicker. Maybe he misread a detour sign. There were many harmless explanations. He needed to wait for the bus to reach its next recognizable area before making any assumptions. Meanwhile, more staff gathered quietly near windows or hallways, checking for updates without disrupting their responsibilities. Everyone treated the matter with calm professionalism, knowing that careful handling was important. Rowan called again soon after. Sir, our team predicts that the bus may reach a major junction in a few minutes. If it returns toward the main road, that would be reassuring. If not, we'll continue to observe. Daniel replied with steady calmness. Thank you, Rowan. Please continue with caution. Within the embassy halls, the gentle hum of morning work carried on. Printers whirred, phones rang softly, staff walked briskly through corridors. Yet beneath that everyday rhythm, there was a shared sense of quiet concern, a warm, respectful concern for a little girl everyone adored. Daniel knew better than to show visible worry. Calmness was part of his role, both as a diplomat and as a father. So he remained steady, breathing evenly, listening carefully, waiting for the next update. He believed, truly believed, that everything would make sense soon. But until he understood the reason for the route change, he would stay alert. The school would stay alert. The embassy would stay alert. Rowan's team would stay alert. And in all that alertness, there was a deep, shared hope that by the time the bus reached its next turn, everything would begin to fall gently into place. The morning sun had climbed a little higher by the time Charlotte's bus approached a wide road where several lanes met. The sky was bright, and the light made everything seem clearer, yet the bus still moved along a path that didn't match anything the children recognized. They sat quietly now, their earlier chatter replaced with soft whispers and thoughtful glances at the windows. Charlotte kept her eyes on the world outside. She noticed long stretches of open space and buildings she didn't know. The bus wasn't moving fast, but each turn felt like a small reminder that things were different today. She held her notebook gently, running her fingers along the edge as if the familiar feel of the paper would keep her grounded. Miss Hannah sat in her seat, watching the road ahead. She didn't want to alarm the children, but she also couldn't ignore the unusual morning. Her face remained calm, her voice soft whenever she spoke to the students near her. Still, her fingers kept brushing the small radio clipped to her badge. Every so often she looked toward the bus driver, hoping he would say something that would make everything make sense. Back outside on the road, Rowan's security team had been following the bus route from a respectful distance. They didn't use sirens or rush. Their vehicles blended into the normal flow of traffic, staying calm and steady. The goal was not to scare anyone. It was simply to stay near enough to observe, to be present, and to understand what was happening. As the bus approached the large junction, a place where several main roads crossed, one of Rowan's vehicles merged into a nearby lane. It was carefully done, slow and natural, as though it were any other car traveling the same way. Another vehicle positioned itself a few car lengths behind. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, nothing alarming, just quiet, thoughtful movement. Inside the bus, Charlotte felt a small shift in her stomach. Not fear, just awareness. She sensed that something important was happening outside, something she didn't fully understand yet. She looked through the window and noticed a dark-colored vehicle 2 lanes away, one that seemed to stay near the bus every time she glanced at it. It didn't look unusual, but something about the way it remained nearby caught her attention. The bus slowed as it reached the junction, waiting for the light to turn green. Charlotte looked at Miss Hannah, who gave her a gentle smile, the kind of smile grown-ups give when they want children to feel safe even during unusual moments. Charlotte returned the smile, though quietly. She appreciated Miss Hannah's calmness. The light turned green and the bus moved forward. But before it could continue down the next road, 2 other vehicles happened to pass through the intersection at the same time. They didn't block the bus. They didn't force anything. They simply slowed enough to create a natural pause in the bus's path, allowing the security team to understand how the driver intended to proceed. Rowan's team communicated softly through radios, their voices calm, their instructions clear but gentle. They were doing everything with great care because their goal was comfort, not tension. After observing the bus for several minutes, one of the security vehicles gradually moved closer, not directly behind the bus, but near enough that if needed, they could be seen. The driver of the security car made sure to keep a respectful distance, mindful that the children inside might look out and notice. On the bus, Miss Hannah gently leaned forward again. "Mr. Denny," she said in a warm tone, "the school wants an update. Could you let us know why we're taking this road today?" The driver kept his hands steady on the wheel. His voice was quiet but a little unsure. "I thought this way might be quicker," he said. "I heard there might be traffic earlier." Miss Hannah listened carefully. She didn't want to challenge him too strongly, but she also needed clarity. "All right," she replied softly. "If that's the case, thank you for thinking ahead. Could we call the school to let them know the new plan?" There was a small pause before the driver answered. "Let's just get through this part first," he said gently. Miss Hannah nodded but took a slow breath. She reached for her radio again and informed the school of the driver's explanation. The school staff responded with careful, thoughtful questions and reassurances. They weren't accusing anyone. They simply wanted to be certain everyone felt safe. Behind the bus, Rowan's vehicles continued in a peaceful, orderly line. They didn't flash lights or honk or attempt to approach directly. The team understood that children were on board, and everything had to be handled with the calmest hands and softest voices. Soon the bus came to a small stoplight where the road narrowed slightly. This natural slowing of traffic allowed one of the security vehicles to pull up on the side, far enough not to cause attention, but close enough that Mr. Denny could see them if he happened to look into his mirror. Miss Hannah looked out the front window and noticed the gentle presence of the cars around them. Something about the way they moved made her realize they weren't ordinary cars passing by. She recognized the type of vehicles Rowan's team usually used, the clean design, the quiet engine, the way they positioned themselves in traffic. Her eyes softened with relief, understanding that help was nearby. Charlotte saw the same car through her window and felt a tiny spark of recognition. She had seen cars like that at the embassy before. The sight puzzled her at first, but soon a calm awareness settled over her. She couldn't explain why, but she felt slightly more at ease. As the bus slowed again at another light, one of Rowan's team members stepped out. Not abruptly, not in a hurry, but peacefully. He walked toward the front of the bus using slow, friendly steps, holding his security badge in clear sight. His expression was gentle and his posture relaxed. Anyone watching would see a person approaching with courtesy, not urgency. Miss Hannah noticed him and immediately felt reassured. She stood up slowly and addressed the children in a soft tone. "Everyone stays seated, all right. Everything is fine. Someone just needs to check something." The children nodded, trusting her calm voice. The driver also saw the man through the window. He opened the bus door halfway, and the security staff member greeted him politely, asking an easy question. "Good morning, sir. We just want to make sure everything is all right. We received word that the route changed today." There was nothing tense about the moment. Cars moved peacefully around them. The air felt still and quiet. Birds perched on nearby wires. The world, despite the unusual situation, continued in gentle harmony. The driver swallowed softly and nodded. "I was trying to avoid traffic. Maybe I should have called it in." The security staff member smiled politely. "Thank you for explaining. We appreciate your care. Could we help guide the bus back toward the familiar route? The families and school staff are just wanting confirmation." His tone was warm, not controlling. His eyes showed sincerity, not suspicion. He spoke like someone offering support, not pressure. Miss Hannah stepped closer, and the security member greeted her kindly as well. "Everyone all right inside?" he asked. "Yes," she replied with relief in her voice. "The children are calm. Thank you for checking." Charlotte watched from her seat, her eyes wide but thoughtful. She saw the interaction clearly. There was no argument, no disagreement, just adults talking gently, trying to understand one another. The atmosphere felt steady and respectful, and it made her feel more grounded. The driver nodded again. "If you can help with directions, that would be good." "Of course," the staff member replied with a reassuring smile. "We're here to help everyone get where they need to go." He walked back toward his vehicle, his steps unhurried. The bus door closed softly, and the engine hummed at a low, steady rhythm. A peaceful feeling spread through the children as the bus started moving once again, this time gently aligning with the guided path formed by the security vehicles. The children began whispering again, but now their voices were full of curiosity instead of uncertainty. "Who was that person?" She didn't know every detail, but she understood something important. The adults were paying attention, the situation was calm, and she could trust the presence of the people guiding the bus. Miss Hannah returned to her seat with a peaceful expression. She reassured the children that they were heading back toward the right direction, and they nodded with relief. As the scenery outside began to shift back toward roads Charlotte recognized, tree-lined paths, small shops, familiar signs, she let out a gentle breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The morning had taken an unexpected turn, but now everything seemed to be easing into place. The world outside looked brighter again, and Charlotte felt grateful for the quiet strength of all the adults working together, without rushing, without fear, and without a single harsh moment. It was a strange morning, yes, but also a reminder of how calm decisions, soft voices, and steady hearts could guide even the most confusing situations back into something peaceful and safe. As the bus continued along the guided route, the atmosphere slowly shifted from uncertain to comfortable. The children began noticing familiar places again, small bakeries, tiny parks, and corners where they usually waved at people during their morning rides. The bus still moved carefully, with the security vehicles nearby, but the sense of calm inside grew stronger with each passing minute. Charlotte watched the world outside with soft curiosity. She felt lighter now, like a gentle weight had lifted from her shoulders. She understood that something unusual had happened, but she also understood that the adults around her were handling it with great care. That alone helped her feel steady. Miss Hannah kept glancing back at the children, smiling at them every so often. She checked on those who looked nervous, spoke softly to those who had questions, and even encouraged a few who wanted to practice their reading or talk quietly with seatmates. Her calmness balanced the whole bus. After a short while, the bus began slowing down. It wasn't an abrupt stop. It was gradual, smooth, and steady, like the natural slowing of a car approaching a peaceful rest area. The children straightened in their seats, curious about where they were going next. The location wasn't a busy street or an unfamiliar stretch of road. Instead, it was a bright open area near a community gathering spot, chosen by Rowan's team because it was safe, quiet, and easy for everyone to communicate without confusion. There were trees along the sidewalk and benches where people sometimes sat with their morning coffee. The breeze carried a warm, gentle scent from flower beds nearby. The security vehicles parked at respectful distances. They didn't crowd the bus. They didn't rush. They simply positioned themselves in a way that made coordination easy and calm. When the bus came to a stop, Miss Hannah stood up with her usual warm expression. "All right, everyone," she said gently, "we're just making a small stop. Please stay seated until I let you know what to do." The children nodded. They trusted her voice. Outside, one of Rowan's team members approached the bus door. His steps were slow, his hands visible, his expression friendly. When the door opened, he greeted the driver and Miss Hannah politely. "Good morning again," he said in a mild, soothing tone. "Thank you for stopping. We'd like to talk with you both and make sure everything is all right." The driver nodded, grateful for the polite manner. He didn't feel accused or pressured, only supported. "Of course," he replied softly. Miss Hannah stepped down from the bus first, speaking with the staff member quietly. She explained how calm the children had been and how they had handled the unusual morning with remarkable patience. The security member smiled kindly, impressed by her gentle leadership. Another member of Rowan's team appeared, also calm and warm in demeanor. He glanced inside the bus and gave the children a friendly wave. Charlotte noticed the wave and returned it shyly, which made him smile even more. Now that adults were speaking openly and kindly outside, the morning didn't feel confusing anymore. It felt like a situation simply being sorted out with care. A few minutes later, another vehicle arrived, one that Charlotte recognized instantly. Her father sometimes traveled in similar cars. The vehicle parked slowly in the shaded area nearby, and two more embassy staff members stepped out. They looked calm, focused, and peaceful, carrying notebooks and speaking in soft tones. Soon after, Rowan himself stepped forward. He was a tall man with a steady presence, known for his thoughtful way of talking and his reassuring manner. He didn't rush toward the bus. He walked gently, pausing to smile at a few children who peeked through the windows. His eyes softened when they landed on Charlotte's seat. Even from outside, he could see her watching him with quiet curiosity. He gave a small wave, like someone greeting an old friend, and Charlotte smiled back. Then came the moment that eased the heart of everyone nearby. One member of Rowan's team approached the bus steps and spoke in a warm voice. "We're going to help everyone step outside for a moment, just to make sure everyone is comfortable and to answer any questions you might have." Miss Hannah stepped onto the bus again. "Students," she said softly, "you may come out one row at a time. Remember to walk slowly and stay together so we can all stay safe and calm." The children followed her instructions beautifully. They walked down the aisle with steady steps, holding their backpacks or jackets close, looking around at the peaceful open area outside. The moment Charlotte stepped out of the bus, the breeze brushed softly against her face. She looked around and noticed how the sunlight warmed the pavement and how the shadows of the trees moved gently in the wind. She felt grounded, like she had stepped into a place where answers would come naturally. As soon as she stood on the ground, Rowan approached her with a gentle smile. His voice was soft enough that she wouldn't feel overwhelmed. "Good morning, Charlotte," he said kindly. "You did very well today. Everyone is proud of how calm you stayed." Charlotte's cheeks warmed with a small blush. "Thank you," she replied. "Is everything okay now?" "Yes," Rowan said gently. "We're just making sure everything is clear and everyone feels safe. You're doing great." Nearby, Daniel had stepped out of his car. Charlotte hadn't seen him yet because she was looking at Rowan, but when she heard her father's familiar footsteps approaching, her heart lifted. Daniel crouched down to her level. His eyes held relief, warmth, and pride. "Hi, sweetheart," he said with a gentle smile, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You handled everything today with so much maturity." She wrapped her arms around him in a soft hug. It wasn't dramatic or emotional. It was quiet, full of warmth, and filled with a mutual sense of peace. Daniel hugged her back gently, grateful for the calmness surrounding the scene. Some children watched the reunion with small smiles, while others chatted among themselves, enjoying the fresh air and the break from the bus ride. Miss Hannah guided them to stand in a neat line, praising them for their patience and good behavior. Meanwhile, Rowan and the driver spoke nearby. Their conversation was calm, respectful, and private. They simply exchanged thoughts about the route change, the confusion it had caused, and how communication could be improved in the future so that everyone, from the school to the parents to the children, felt informed and reassured. After a few minutes, the driver nodded in agreement. "I understand now," he said kindly. "I should have updated someone before choosing a different road. Thank you for explaining things so clearly." Rowan gave him a warm smile. "Thank you for being cooperative. We appreciate your help." Once everything was clarified and everyone felt comfortable, another staff member stepped forward to speak with the group of children. "Everyone is safe," she said with a cheerful, gentle voice. "You all have been incredibly patient today. We're going to take good care of you, and guess what? Your parents and teachers are so proud of how well you all behaved." Some children giggled happily. Others relaxed even more, relieved to hear such friendly reassurance. Charlotte stayed close to her father as the final checks took place. He held her hand loosely, letting her feel safe but not overly restricted. She liked the steady way his hand rested around hers, giving her a sense of familiarity and comfort. After a couple more minutes, Daniel knelt again to speak to her softly. "We'll head home from here, all right? Miss Hannah and the other children will follow the school's plan. You've had quite a morning." Charlotte nodded. She felt tired, not physically, but in the way a person feels after experiencing something confusing yet calm. Before leaving, she looked back at the security team and the bus. She noticed how peaceful everything looked now, the children talking, the adults coordinating, the gentle sunlight covering the scene like a soft blanket. Charlotte gave Miss Hannah a small wave. Miss Hannah waved back with a wide, warm smile. "You were wonderful today," she called softly. "Have a restful day, dear." Charlotte smiled proudly and squeezed her father's hand as they walked toward the car. Behind her, everything continued in a smooth, organized manner. The children lined up neatly. The bus driver talked easily with staff. The security team carefully documented what they needed to understand. No one was upset. No one was tense. It was all handled with patience, communication, and kindness. It was the kind of moment that reminded everyone, including Charlotte, that even in unexpected situations, people could work together calmly and respectfully to make sure every child felt safe and cared for. As Daniel guided his daughter into the car, he looked at her with warmth. "You know," he said softly, "today showed me something important." "What?" Charlotte asked, buckling her seatbelt. "That you are growing into someone who stays thoughtful even when things don't go as planned. I'm very proud of that." Charlotte felt a soft glow inside her chest. She smiled at him, then leaned her head back on the seat as the car began to move. The morning breeze drifted through the open window. The world looked bright and peaceful again, and Charlotte knew that although the day had started unusually, it was ending with calm clarity, gentle guidance, and the comforting presence of people who cared deeply for her and every child on that bus. The rest of the day unfolded. Slowly, with a soft, comforting rhythm that helped ease the unusual start of the morning. As Charlotte rode home with her father, the quiet hum of the car and the steady scenery outside gave her time to think about everything that had happened. She looked out the window at familiar buildings and trees, feeling their presence like gentle anchors tying her back to the normal world she knew so well. Her father drove calmly, glancing at her every now and then with a warm smile. He didn't ask too many questions. He knew she needed time to settle her thoughts. Instead, he let the calm of the ride surround them like a blanket, making the moment feel peaceful. When they arrived home, the house felt especially welcoming. The soft colors of the living room, the quiet ticking of the clock, and the comforting scent of breakfast that still lingered all made Charlotte feel safe and grounded. Her mother, who had been updated by the embassy, hurried gently to the door. She didn't rush or overwhelm Charlotte. She simply wrapped her in a warm, soft hug, one that communicated love, reassurance, and relief without a single word. Charlotte hugged her back, feeling her mother's steady breath and the familiar fabric of her clothes against her cheek. Her mother whispered gently, "I'm glad you're home, sweetheart. You did so well today." Charlotte smiled and nodded. She felt proud, not in a loud way, but in a quiet, meaningful way that stayed with her. After the hug, her parents sat with her at the dining table. They offered her a glass of her favorite fruit juice and a small plate of warm bread with honey. The simple meal comforted her, and she began to relax even more. Her parents listened as she described her morning little by little, how she felt, what she saw, how Miss Hannah stayed calm, and how the other children reacted. She didn't exaggerate anything. She spoke as she had experienced it, carefully, honestly, and gently. Her father nodded thoughtfully throughout her story. Her mother held her hand with a soft smile. When Charlotte finished, her father said quietly, "You were very observant. That is a wonderful skill. Not everyone your age pays attention the way you do." Her mother added, "And you remained patient. Patience is not always easy, especially when something feels unusual. Charlotte felt warmth bloom in her chest. Hearing her parents speak so kindly made her heart relax even more. Meanwhile, at the embassy and at the school, adults were carefully discussing how to improve transportation routines so the morning would be smoother for all children in the future. Their tone was not blameful or harsh. They were simply committed to making things clearer and more organized. Everyone wanted children to feel comfortable and confident during their school journeys. The school principal arranged a meeting with transportation staff, where they reviewed ways to better communicate route changes, even if they were small. They talked about sending earlier updates, adding additional support staff on buses, and making sure drivers checked in before adjusting their routes. The conversation was thoughtful, professional, and cooperative. At the same time, Rowan's security team met with embassy officials. Their discussion focused on making sure families were reassured without creating worry. They reviewed how calmly things had been handled and considered ways to enhance communication between the embassy and the school. The tone of the meeting was gentle and encouraging. Everyone appreciated how peacefully the morning had been resolved. Back at home, Charlotte spent her afternoon doing quiet things she enjoyed. She curled up on the couch with a soft blanket and reread her favorite storybook. Its comforting words wrapped around her like a familiar melody. Her mother sat in the same room, reading a magazine and glancing at Charlotte every so often with a loving expression. Later, they sat together at the kitchen table to finish Charlotte's science project. Even though the morning had been unusual, Charlotte still cared about her work. Her father helped her organize her notes, and her mother helped her neatly color a diagram. Their teamwork made her smile. She felt supported, heard, and understood. At one point, her father paused and said, "Sometimes days surprise us, Charlotte. Not all surprises are bad. Some teach us new things without hurting us. Today taught us something important about communication and about staying calm." Charlotte nodded thoughtfully. "It also taught me that many people care about us," she said softly. Her father's smile widened. "Yes, sweetheart, many people do." In the evening, the school sent a gentle message to parents. It explained that all children were safe, that the situation had been carefully handled, and that improvements were already being made. The message had a warm tone, reminding families that the school prioritized safety and open communication. Parents appreciated the calm explanation. Several replied with notes of gratitude, thanking the staff and the transportation team for taking good care of their children. The atmosphere in the community remained peaceful and encouraging, with everyone understanding that the unusual morning was handled responsibly and respectfully. News of the event reached some local families, who expressed appreciation for the quick response of the security team and the patience of the children. People spoke kindly about Miss Hannah's calm leadership and the thoughtful coordination between the school, parents, and embassy staff. It became a story not of fear, but of cooperation, an example of how adults could work together to keep children feeling safe. That night, as the sun set and the sky shifted to soft blues and purples, Charlotte prepared for bed. Her room felt especially comforting. The moonlight filtered through the curtains in a gentle glow. Her favorite stuffed animal sat waiting at the corner of her bed. Her mother tucked her in and brushed a strand of hair away from her face. "Are you feeling all right now?" she asked softly. Charlotte nodded. "Yes, I feel safe." Her mother kissed her forehead. "Good, and remember, no matter what happens, we are always here for you." A little later, her father came in. He sat on the edge of her bed and took her hand gently. "Today showed us how strong you are," he told her. "Not because you did something big, but because you stayed calm and thoughtful. That is real strength." Charlotte squeezed his hand, smiling sleepily. "Thank you," she whispered. Before leaving the room, her father dimmed the lights, leaving only a soft lamp glowing near her shelf. The quiet hum of night filled the air. Crickets chirped softly outside. A faint rustle from the leaves drifted through the open window. Charlotte lay still, feeling the peaceful rhythm of her home embrace her. She thought about her friends on the bus and hoped they were also settling into their homes comfortably. She imagined them telling their parents about the unusual day and smiling over snacks and warm drinks. She pictured Miss Hannah sitting with a cup of tea, reflecting on the morning with a sense of relief. Charlotte closed her eyes, letting the gentle thoughts carry her deeper into rest. Years later, when Charlotte would look back on this day, she would remember not the confusion but the calm solutions. She would remember how adults communicated respectfully, how people worked together kindly, and how no one allowed worry to turn into fear. She would remember her father's steady voice, her mother's loving arms, Miss Hannah's helpful guidance, and the gentle presence of Rowan's team nearby. She would remember the morning as a lesson, not in danger but in cooperation. But for now, as a young girl lying in her warm bed, she simply felt safe. Safe in her home, safe in her family's care, and safe knowing that people around her, seen and unseen, were committed to her well-being. She drifted into sleep with a peaceful heart, wrapped in the knowledge that even when things take unexpected turns, they can still end in comfort, clarity, and kindness. And somewhere outside, under the soft glow of the moon, the world continued quietly, steady, calm, and full of gentle hope for the days ahead.